and welcome to this webinar hosted by the Yale Center for Business and the Environment. I'm Heather Fitzgerald, Associate Director, and my colleagues and I are delighted today to share with you some reflections over our past decade, some of our current work, and to talk to you about our future directions. To that end, we'll save time at the end for questions and insights from the audience. We really want to hear from you, so use the Q&A functionality that you see on your screen to submit questions at any point in time in the webinar, and we will answer them at the end. I'm joined today by Brad Gentry, Co-Faculty Director at CBEY, Associate Dean and Professor in Practice, Cass Walker, Associate Director, who leads our social and environmental programs and initiatives, and Stuart DeCue, Director of the Center. So, and you know what, I have a pretty slide that I would like to show with all of our awesome faces. If I can get there they are. You can see all of us. I'd like to start by asking Brad to share a few reflections on the growth of CBEY since it launched 10 years ago, and a bit about the ways CBEY fills gaps to meet the needs of students through our innovative programs and curriculum. Brad, how have you seen this center grow?
A lot. One of the nice things for me about the center is that we've been able to stay consistent with the mission of not really focusing on my or any other faculty's research first and working out from there, but rather focusing on students who are interested in connecting business and the environment, and to do so around solutions to pressing environmental issues. So we've continued to have that focus. We've been thinking about what that means for our teaching, as well as for the research and engagement activities that we do. And so I just want to walk through some of the numbers there. Many thanks to the small number of joint degrees who 10, 11, 12 years ago went to Dean Spath and Podolny and said, there's something here that we're underinvesting in, we should do more. Since then, you'll see that the number of joint degrees has grown. But it's not just the joint degree population, it's also students at SOM who are interested in environmental issues, students at FES who are interested in management issues, as well as alums and the broader publics that are pursuing these business solutions to, again, pressing environmental issues. So, we have now somewhere between 50 and 60 joint degrees on campus at a particular time. We've got over 50 students employed as research assistants. We've gone a little nuts with the number of events that we do, in part because we're responding to student and alumni demand and trying to be as responsive as we can in doing that. We've also been doing many more webinars to reach global audiences on topics, whether that be the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition and the internal carbon pricing webinars, or whether that be conservation or clean energy finance webinars, very exciting things. We've also had the great good fortune with the resources we've had to award a number of prizes for students developing new solutions and new businesses, and Cass and Stuart will talk more about that a bit later. So we've seen a huge increase in the kinds of things that we're doing. One of the wonderful things here is that we've been able to respond to student pitches on an annual basis. We do ask students for their ideas about what's missing and what should be added, and our advisory board and others have been incredibly supportive in helping us figure out how to do that. It does mean that we need to think about where we concentrate our efforts and how we best move things forward. So as we talk today, we'll talk a bit more about our online or other technology-enabled learning initiatives. We'll talk about some of the entrepreneurship work that's happening, but more about the entrepreneurship work and the work in environmental finance and markets and how those might be developed. So just shifting to the curriculum for a second, when CBEY was formed, small number of joint degrees, little understanding of what was happening at both schools in terms of FES courses that might be interesting to SOM students because of the science they offered, or SOM courses that might be interesting to FES students because of the business skills and perspectives they are, or they offered. So since the beginning, we've been doing a lot of work to try to understand the offerings of both courses. And a lot of the student pitches have been around, we have a gap in some area, how might we fill it? This has led to a really interesting set of activities with Daniel Gross, who many of you probably connected with during your time. Daniel's an advisory board member. He was the second research assistant I had during my time at Yale. Came in wanting to do clean energy finance, which didn't really exist as a field at that point. So went and did normal coal-fired and dirty power projects until the opportunity came along, at which point he raised his hand and started doing it at GE and at Goldman Sachs, and then at Hudson Clean Energy Partners. And we were incredibly fortunate to, when Daniel said, can I come do, or we asked him, can you come do a session to meet student interest in project finance for clean energy, which, as you can see from the slide here, started as a half semester course, and this past year was the largest elective at either FES or SOM, with over 120 students enrolled. The thing that I love about this course is that a number of pure FES students took it, and several of them got jobs in finance coming out of it because of the skill sets that Daniel gave them and their ability to show that they had the chops to do what it took to go to firms investing in clean energy. We also have been incredibly fortunate to be able to think about ways to bring the best of FES into SOM, particularly working with the Global Network for Advanced Management, the network of business schools around the world that SOM started about 5 years ago. They just had their 5th year reunion. And that really gave me an opportunity to say, I've always wanted to do a class for MBA students. What would I cover? And we decided that thinking about the resource systems that businesses are embedded in, but usually don't think about, materials, energy, food, water, climate, and natural areas, was a great place to start. And if you had FES students coming in to help put the slides together and the course sections together, talking about the state of those resource systems, and MBA students available to talk about companies, Alcoa, Coca-Cola, Dow, General Electric, others that are working in those and dependent upon those systems. If you bring those together, they can design a course that's incredibly interesting and useful for folks. This has been a great experiment. It's spawned a number of other courses, including one on urban resilience with the Rockefeller Foundation that we've been offering through the Genome Network, and is about to be our first MOOC, a massive open online course through Coursera. So that was bringing science to MBA students. We also, this past year, working with Stuart and many other people, put together a course trying to bring management more into the FES side. So our fundamentals of working with people class featured a number of SOM faculty coming in and talking about understanding yourself and others, working in teams, working within organizations, working across organizations. And then we had FES alums or scientists or other colleagues talking about, so how does that play out in their work, whether that be the Urban Resource Initiative's work in New Haven, or the Forest Dialogue, or in this case, you see Jen Molnar, an alum at the Nature Conservancy, who's been leading their partnership with Dow Chemical on where green infrastructure can help with their plant in Freeport, and how one gets engineers and ecologists talking together. We had, I think, a much higher take-up on this course than we had expected in the FES students. They were very deeply engaged and yielded some really interesting insights that we're going to need to work on going forward, including FES students they need to work on disagreeing with each other. And so there's lots of interesting work that we can do there going forward. With that, I'm going to pass it to Cass, talk a little bit about innovation and entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Brad. So as many of you know, over the last couple of years, we've really expanded CBEY's offerings around innovation and entrepreneurship, building on existing programs like the SABOCA and SAVIN grants, building out co-curricular opportunities. We've run the environmental and social entrepreneurship professional skills workshops in collaboration with some of our partners. We've also experimented with some independent studies and full credit courses. A great example being the Social Entrepreneurship Consultancy project course, where FES and SOM students consult for their peers who are starting sustainability-focused businesses. We've also brought in a lot of alumni and experts to provide more mentorship and expert advice to our budding entrepreneurs, including some of our executive fellows and residents like Peter Boyd and Vincent Stanley, along with some alums who have come in and done one-day office hours around specific areas such as sustainable food. The other piece that we really focused on is using our position as a catalyst for entrepreneurship to really collaborate with our partners across the university. And I think one point that's been really interesting to see is how CBEY has really acted as that catalyst across the university for social entrepreneurship and environmental entrepreneurship to grow. Everything from concrete examples such as the Saban Prize being the first large $25,000 student-focused prize for business ideas. It started 8 years ago. We've now seen 3 other $25,000 prizes use the same model and process to be able to give students the opportunity not only in environment and sustainability, but to win money in public health, education, and technology. So building on CBEY's respected reputation across the university, we spearheaded the initiative to start the Collaborative on Social Entrepreneurship at Yale. This started about 1.5 years ago, and it's a collaboration between the 10 centers and programs that touch specifically social entrepreneurship at Yale. So you'll see alongside CBEY, our partners at the School of Management in the program on social entrepreneurship and program on entrepreneurship, Yale Landscape Lab, a fairly new initiative out on West Campus, Dwight Hall, the Yale Entrepreneurial Institute, the CEAD. So we really, at this point, cover all of the campus and all of the different specializations that students have. And through the collaborative, we've been able to come together around a common goal. One Yale that fosters, supports, and inspires an entrepreneurial spirit to address the world's critical challenges and positively affect millions of lives over the next decade. This goal was really brought about and edited and agreed upon by the members of faculty, staff, and students that are engaged in the collaborative. And through that, we've been able to come up with common values and really identify the gaps that we see in the ecosystem and how we can best support students that are starting social ventures and also students that are going out to just create social change. So when we talk about social entrepreneurship, we see the students that are starting their own social businesses at one end of the spectrum, but also the students that are going out to create social change through entrepreneurship, through being part of the nonprofit world, etc. So one exciting piece that's happening in the coming year is that there is a new center opening at Yale, the Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale, or Sci-City, as it's going to be known. And CBEY is really positioning itself as a key strategic partner as the city opens its doors and really focuses on engaging an interdisciplinary and diverse set of students in innovation and entrepreneurship. So what impact are we having? I wanted to highlight a couple of things that have happened through our collaborative actions. One is the launch of the Entrepreneurship Across Yale website, which has been funded by the collaborative. And this is a one-stop shop for students to find resources at Yale. We have so many things happening across the university, and through this, it's a simple tool for students to identify which centers and which opportunities they can access. Another great success has been the expansion of Startup Yale. So as we mentioned, the Saban Prize has inspired a few other prizes across the university. And this past year, we rebranded as Startup Yale, which is the largest day that focuses on student entrepreneurship prizes. And we actually saw the 4 prizes be won by women across the university, which was then featured in ink. The article was actually written by one of the first Saban Prize winners, so there was a nice cool circle there. On the other end of the spectrum, some things that we've been focusing on kind of on the more research and publication side in the entrepreneurship and innovation side of things at CBEY is evaluating the purpose of the corporation. So we released this publication in partnership with Patagonia earlier this year. This was a result of an independent study by Abigail Barnes, an FES student, and it really focuses on giving a non-biased perspective on what it means to start either a B Corp or a benefit corporation, and what the differences are between those two things. And you'll see it had great traction. We've had over 1 million Twitter users exposed to the guidebook through partnerships with B Corp that were able to publicize it widely in Patagonia, and over 1,500 visits to the publication page. We also use this publication, which is aimed to be very much on the action side of research, to hold a few events, including a B Corp bootcamp, where students came and really dove into what it means to start a B Corp, and also engaging our alumni and friends at an investor roundtable, where we had 40 people, 40 investors, discuss the challenges and opportunities in funding and investing in B Corps. One thing to keep an eye out, the next step for this side of things is to do a publication around an investor's guide to B Corps. One thing that came out of the roundtable was actually there's a lot of lack of basic knowledge around what it means and what the challenges are. So we're going to be working with partners in the coming months to do a follow-up publication that really focuses on what investors need to know. So there's a lot of new and exciting things happening at CBEY. We're going to be having a renewed focus on climate change entrepreneurship in the coming year, as well as really focusing on building stronger and more relationships across campus, especially with the new center that will be coming on board. So with that, handing over to Stu.
Great, thanks, Cass. And building on Cass's comments of how she's done a wonderful job of kind of melding together and creating a host of internal partnerships around social entrepreneurship, where people are all running at the same pace and have the same vision and mission. One of the things that over the course of 10 years we've really prioritized is CBEY as a platform for all of these partnerships to come together. I'm going to talk about what one looks like in practice, where we're engaging a lot of individuals and organizations on the external side. And it starts with a couple of things. I mean, we look for these constantly, and what we're looking for is first, as Cass mentioned on the B Corp guidebook, what can we learn? And what we really are seeking out is some area that we don't know enough about and we want to learn more about. And then the second, how does this benefit students? Where are students going to gain professional skills, knowledge, insight that will allow them to go and make an impact in the world? And that really is the third component, is where will this research make an impact immediately? And one of our best examples of this is a 3-year research grant, which we ran, and you'll see the partners on the bottom of the slide, funded by the Department of Energy in partnership with a nonprofit firm, Smart Power, and the Connecticut Green Bank as a key technical advisor and guide. The Yale Center for Business and the Environment was the home for this research, driven by students that were going out and conducting it under the guidance and supervision of Ken Gillingham, associate professor here at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, and Brian Bollinger at Duke. And this really looked at how do we expand the market for residential solar, and what are the pathways that make that happen, and how do social interactions and peer influences allow that to occur. And this was generating a tremendous amount of data and opportunities for researchers, but it was also generating an applied impact where at the time this started, there were 800 solar installations in Connecticut in 2012. By the time it finished, there were over 12,000, and the Solarize programs that we ran were responsible for 20% of that growth. So you're seeing that while we're conducting research, we're actively expanding the market on a critical area or issue. And I'm going to go into a little bit, what that looks like and why it was important for us. First, this idea of Solarize, which is a community-based marketing program centered in a town with the town's engagement, with a tiered pricing structure, where the more people that sign up, the lower the cost of solar gets, where you're empowering local individuals to be the ambassadors, to go out and spread the word about solar. It started in 2009 in Oregon and spread across the country. And it was working, but nobody understood why. And Ken Gillingham was just incredibly insightful to be able to put together a team that could be able to test this rigorously in Connecticut. So we ran 58 large-scale field trials that got at the components of this and figured out what worked and what worked best. and how we could help spread that. And it's incredible to see that, as Ken begins to capture, and we've now published the results of this, and you can see that back at the Solarize Your Community guidebook that we drew up before. You can go back and look at that, and that's the translation for all of the academic research with the links to the academic papers for all those who would like to geek out a little bit more on it. You are seeing these incredible effects of the research. So, if you are within a half mile of a solar installation, you're 50% more likely to install, and even more likely if you can see that installation from the road. So it really gets at where we can get students engaged with a whole set of partners where they're learning lots of diverse skills, really understanding a market that's emerging and having an impact. And this is dropping the cost of solar. It is increasing the number of adoptions that are there. And it's something where we see the replication of this, of how do we continue to have an applied impact on a critical question, where students, faculty, alumni, external partners all benefit. Where we can find that sweet spot is really where we like to continue to expand and enhance our work. And we're seeing that now within this own area. So one of the areas that didn't work as well is we weren't able to reach all the low to middle income customers like we want to. Our campaigns weren't functioning as well. And one of the things that Brad talks about a lot is, where is the evolution the next 10 years of CBEY going to go? We've been around for 10 years. Where do we go next? We have to consider ways where we figure out inclusive wealth models, where everyone shares in the benefits of transformations in society and the economy. And if clean energy can't reach every community in the United States, then we haven't done our job, and then we haven't gotten to the point we want to get to. And so in the next 3 years, we'll be testing how do we reach low to middle income communities with the same messages, with new business models, with approaches that allow them and those folks to benefit from the same benefits that middle income or upper middle income folks are receiving. And it's a model, this partnership model that I described, and the evolution, it came from just early research with the Connecticut Green Bank and blossomed into this larger program. And we're seeing that in other areas as well. One, as we move into talking about where are we going next, one of the areas that's really interesting is, over 10 years ago, Brad started something which some folks on the call may have participated in, the Conservation Finance Bootcamp. That intensive training program for individuals led to us launching a webinar series on ecosystem services, a website, a newsletter on conservation finance. And it's really allowed us to then move into a space where we're looking at, well, what does it mean to invest in and support investments in natural infrastructure? How do we think about those, design them, put them in place, invest in them, and support and maintain them? We're going to be looking at that more closely in the coming year with the Nature Conservancy. That same evolution has happened in clean energy finance, where we've gone through that same process, and we're at now looking at these broader questions of, we've got, by some estimates, either 50 to 95 trillion dollars of investment needed to meet the world's critical infrastructure needs in the next 15 years. Where can CBEY play a role in providing pathways and opportunities to make those sustainable investments, to make ones that generate social and environmental capital along with economic value? So those are the types of critical questions that I think we are going to continue to explore and play in as we go forward. Now, there are a couple others, and one, particularly for this group that we would just encourage everyone to consider is where we find these meaningful internal and external collaborations is at meetings and gatherings, particularly amongst alums. And on November 3rd and 4th of this year, the Yale Environmental Sustainability Summit will take place. This is the second iteration of that, and it's some people describe it as the best reunion they've ever attended for people who are interested in this space. 400 alumni coming together, thinking about how they can implement and make change, how they can catalyze, cultivate, and connect the types of connections and nodes that they need to be able to move things forward. Moving back or connecting back to the idea of where do we take research and put it into practice, we're really excited that with another one of our partners, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, we're launching this year the Yale Initiative on Sustainable Finance, where Todd Court from the Center for Business and the Environment, who's the faculty director at the School of Management, and Dan Esty, who's the faculty director of the Yale Center for Environmental Law and Policy, are collaborating to look at issues of materiality in ESG reporting. And they're going to be digging into what are the, how do we reset the concept and figure out the best ways to both capture the data, ensure that it's accurate, and make it actionable for investors, policymakers, and others. How do we wade into a complex and sometimes confusing space and use the convening power of Yale and the intellectual capital that we have here to provide clarity and make sense of it. As Cass mentioned, her work has really created a foundation and connected a lot of folks around how do we mobilize the university to provide resources, support, and advice for students on how they can create these entrepreneurial solutions to a host of issues. This Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale, we're going to be really, hopefully providing a lot of resources and opportunities for that to be a huge success here, because it is this home and platform. We have a brand shiny new building in the middle of campus that you can come visit, but it's also a place where hopefully we can rally all the intellectual capital and resources at Yale to train it on local, state, national, and international challenges that just have to get solved in the near term. And then finally, the extension of what we do here to a broader group of people. One thing that the webinars, the platforms and websites, the newsletters that have all enabled us to do is to reach a professional audience on a consistent basis with information that we hope can be used in their work immediately. We want to push further on that. And Brad mentioned the curriculum that Daniel Gross had put together. Richard Kaufman's Financing Green Technologies course has been transformational here. Ken Gillingham's courses on clean energy have also been incredibly well received by the students. And one of our goals is to put that together in a package that then could be delivered to folks who are actively moving capital in the markets or developing policy. And so how do we create an online educational program out of the Center for Business and the Environment through the School of Forestry and the School of Management that reaches those critical decision makers with what we think is a unique educational experience based on the expertise and insight of the leading practitioners and academics in the world. So we're really excited about where we're currently at, but we see a tremendous amount of opportunity to continue to grow and build. Most of the best ideas come from people on the line that are, tuning in. So that's why we host these things, because we, so much of this is an evolving set of practices that you all are developing and pushing, and we want to be able to provide a home to cultivate and connect those ideas to the things that are going on here on campus, and provide a platform and a lab for people to test things out and move them forward. So that's, what we're really looking for here is, where can you on the line think about how do you mentor and engage with the entrepreneurs that Cass is cultivating and building up across campus? Where are the types of partnerships and natural infrastructure that, as Brad continues to look at, leveraging his expertise in public and private partnerships, how do we pull in yours to be able to see what does it look like to make these investments? What does it mean for us to get your expertise in the webinars that Heather hosts and that the Clean Energy Finance Forum or the Conservation Finance Network, those articles that we're constantly producing. And all of this is enabled by the fact that we've had incredibly generous donations from alums, from a host of supporters that have allowed us the flexible support to pursue the opportunities that Brad mentioned, where we just open it up and say, what are the ideas that you think we should go after? And we're able to then respond to in a nimble and hopefully effective way to be able to build programs quickly at Yale that serve critical needs. So financial support is, of course, always welcome. But with that, we'll open it up to questions from the audience or any other thoughts on where we should go next, the kind of things we should focus on, questions you have for us, jokes you want to make about our appearance. We all dressed up for the day, so whatever you feel like. But yeah, so let's dig in.
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage you to send in your questions via the Q&A functionality. We have a question here. Should we field it? Are we ready?
Sure. Also saw a raised hand.
Yeah, but then we unraised it.
Okay. Julie, maybe put
I'm
it-
not sure. So Maggie, Yale alumni at 85 asks, I'd love to know more about how you are engaging students through the Global Network for Advanced Management and 100 Resilient Cities in Resilience Planning.
So Maggie, thank you for asking. How much time do I have?
Yeah.
There's a lot going on, and it builds on some of what we've covered a little bit. One of them is the Natural Capital course was featured at a global network meeting where faculty who were thinking about online classes came, and the goal was to have them here and have them develop a concept for a course while they were here. One of the faculty was from the University of British Columbia, Murali Chandrasekharan, and Murali said, oh, I've been talking to the Rockefeller Foundation about how faculty and students across the Global Network for Advanced Management might engage with members of the 100 Resilient Cities Network. And that was about 3 years ago. We've now done 2 online classes and 2 in-person week-long global network weeks. If you think about how students in the global network are engaging with each other, some of it's online, but some of it is sort of a really interesting model of comparative advantage. If some universities some business schools really good at something, instead of sending their students out other places, do what they're really good at home and have students from across the network join. So we did one in Quito, Ecuador during the Habitat 3 conference last year, and we did one in Vancouver in the spring. We'll be doing another online version coming up this next semester. A couple of thoughts. One of them is, during those classes, the students work on projects that are suggested by the chief resiliency officers that put up their hands and say, we'd like to have students work on some. So we work with chief resiliency officers in Semarang, in Pittsburgh, in Norfolk, in San Juan, in Juarez, and I think someplace else that I'm blanking on it. The exciting thing for me this year is that we're going to bring in projects with New Haven. And if you think about the kind of work that Cass has been leading and the opportunities of CBEY as a silo buster, how do we think about moving across the campus and connecting? There is an initiative that we're involved in as well on Urban at Yale, looking across Yale from research to engagement, from global engagement, which a lot of Yale people do, but also local engagement more deeply with the city. And we'll be starting that around flooding issues, coastal with rising sea levels, but also more intense storms on the inland side and how those come together. And where you have not only public housing, but regionally important transit and important parts of the university, like the medical school, train station corridor, Church Street corridor, as areas one can dig into. We're also, the other thing I'll say just quickly and then I'll stop, is we have a lot of students working for cities this summer, which is really, really interesting. That went from very few to probably at least 10. Some of them directly with chief resiliency officers through the connections with the global network. Some of them with alums who are working in organizations like Laura Tam in the Bay Area, which is doing kind of a rebuild by design competition for the Bay Area that looks like what was happening nationally recently. So through projects and classes, through connections into internships, through connections with alums are the prior ways that we're doing that. But if you have ideas, you know, my email is very similar to Stuart's. It's Bradford.Gentry. Drop me a note and I'd be happy to talk further.
Yeah, and just building on that, Maggie, a couple of different ways that we've engaged the Global Network for Advanced Management. You know, 2 years ago, we conducted a survey of all the students in that, so 29 schools in 25 countries, and got 3,700 responses. prior to the Paris climate change agreement. We were polling these business school students from around the globe on what were their perceptions and ideas and opinions around environmental sustainability and climate change. And we just saw this, overwhelming results and consistency across geographies and areas. The global network allows us to do that and to take the pulse of these individuals, that they wanted environmental sustainability incorporated into their jobs. That they wanted to work for companies that they felt had a positive impact on society. That 80%, or over 80% actually were focused on finding companies that had that, had that embedded in their values. 40%, a little over, would take lower salary to work for companies that had this really embedded in their values. And 20% wouldn't work for anybody at all if they didn't feel like they respected them. So the kind of ability to understand and see, well, what does this talent pool look like coming up that's going to, that has certain values, and they want that embedded in the companies or places that they work. And also capturing where we will need to kind of continue to evolve and shape things. Because people were saying they wanted more environmental and social sustainability work incorporated into curriculum across these management schools. That Brad's describing these students going to work for cities, but are we actively training people for the kind of complexity that that people encounter when they are trying to manage these really complex systems and the infrastructure that supports them? And there's an opportunity for us to continue to do better there, which is what we're able to capture through understanding the needs of students in the global network. So lots of different ways that we can build off and support and engage with those 29 schools around the globe.
I mentioned one more thing, and then we can take Thomas's question. So engaging with the 29 schools around the world, just last week, we had a gathering of 7 of them around the collaborative on urban resilience and effectiveness. So how can faculty across the global network work together on urban issues, and identified a number of areas that we'll be working on. And the week after next, Murley will be going to the Rockefeller Foundation's annual gathering of the network and all of their platform partners, of which the global network is one, as our representative there. So we're not only doing the students, but also now increasingly faculty across the different schools.
Thank you, guys. Thomas, hi Thomas, has asked, is there a one-pager describing the structure of the consolidated efforts around energy finance and finance more broadly at CBEY? Addressing that one first. I mean, there's not yet, maybe that could be something that we put our attention to, but I think with the certificate program that's Stuart mentioned, that's obviously a good foundation for that. And if that's something that there's interest in, I'm absolutely happy to pull that together if we think it would be efficient and effective.
Yeah, Thomas, it'd be great for Thomas to suggest what the target audiences might be, because you can see different versions of that.
Yeah, I think, Thomas, one of the things we want to do is there's a couple of different efforts going on. So, if you look at the FES strategic plan at the moment, Matt Kotchin, the associate dean that's in charge of curriculum, is taking a look at curriculum at the School of Forest and Environmental Studies with a broad group of people internally to see, how do you put it together in concentrations in areas where there could be more requirements and where things would begin at a certain level and then begin to build. So I think that what you're identifying is something that is in process, and Matt Kotchin on the curricular side is leading that in the School of Forestry. The energy finance certificate that I was describing, one would be ideal to get small groups of alums together to talk through the way that we're thinking about structuring a course that requires a couple of introductory courses, maybe on energy policy, energy modeling, and basic finance skills, and then moves into policy analysis, energy project finance, financing green technologies, and market development. Where we see the existing courses that we have, how do we tier and build those in a way that allows a professional audience, people with 15 years of experience or more, to be able to walk through that curriculum in a year and get the most out of it. So love to take a bit of your time and some others and test out some ideas on how we put that together.
And just building on Stuart's point about the changes in the curriculum at FES, if we continue the process of moving toward requiring some specializations, and assuming energy is one of them, which I think is a good assumption, then there will be a specialization coordinator appointed. And part of my job going forward will be working with those specialization coordinators to say, okay, are you connecting into the group of alums who are working in that area? Are you connecting into the centers and programs? Are you connecting into the student interest groups? And are we making the most of the Yale networks to support the learning around those specializations?
Yeah. Oh, and just one cool thing, Thomas. So we're producing 7 case studies this summer, which will be coming out every 2 weeks on different innovative energy finance transactions. We did this in partnership with the Coalition for Green Capital, Jeff Shub, who's an SOM alum, the case study team at the School of Management, and the Connecticut Green Bank, and a host of other external partners. And they're really neat. They've got great schematics and finance, actually showing the way that the money flows in the transaction, the way it's securitized, all the different components of it, the actors. And so you'll see those coming out every 2 weeks over the course of the summer. And we view that as well as a way to pull together a lot of the kind of opportunity to learn from what is happening in the field on the transactions that are kind of, leading edge of thought and practice. So tune in for those. I think we'll be sending one of those out.
Yeah, a newsletter or an email will be going out, I think today, but also the first one is already live. If you wanted to check it out at our website, just search under case studies and they'll all pop up, and it's the first one focused on Rhode Island, or transactions in Rhode Island.
Yep.
So should I move on to Bob's question?
Sure.
Bob has asked, is there a list of students who participated in CBEY through today, and what are they now doing?
Yeah, there are. There's a slide right here that shows a couple of them. Some of these obviously predate the Center for Business and the Environment. So, one of the things we didn't describe for those of you who aren't familiar with the center is that it builds on the history of Yale having the oldest joint degree between School of Management and School of Forestry and Environmental Studies of its kind. And the alumni that have come through that are an incredible group of folks. And I think these are the types of people that are drawn to Yale in general, who are kind of seeking out careers that they want, not the ones that they know exist. And they're willing to kind of invest the time, energy, and effort to be able to create opportunities that define the field. So you've got Jackie Roberts listed there, who is the person who created the first corporate partnership between EDF and McDonald's. You've got Charlotte Kaiser, who's instrumental in creating both the center, but also the Center for Business and Environment, but also the Nature Best program at the Nature Conservancy. Elliot Mainzer, who runs the Bonneville Power Administration. Brad described Daniel Gross, who essentially created the tax equity flip for solar. You've got people who've been drawn to go work at the green banks in New York and Connecticut. So you've really got these kind of individuals, and that's what makes this job so fun, and what makes our work so enjoyable is this constant renewable resource of incredibly smart people who want to define that the way the world should be, not the way that we see it right now. And those folks, yeah, we do have a list. You can actually go to the website and see all the alumni that have been involved in the center over time. If you just go and search by alums, you'll see all the individuals that have either come back and talked given a talk here, or students that have graduated, joint degrees, research assistants, a host of different folks. So lots of different people to engage with. And then if you want to meet all of them in person, go to Yes, because so many of them will be there. There were 400 there the last time, and we expect a similar number or more for this coming version on November 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely encourage you to use our website, cbey.yale.edu, as a resource to look at our community and who we're talking to, alumni and beyond. So definitely check that out. That's our last live question, unless anybody has one that they would like to put up. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. It was really great to engage with you. We'll continue the dialogue, perhaps do another one of these, I don't know, in 6 months' time or a year. But also, we'll be emailing and connecting with you. Feel free, please, to reach out to us for any questions, comments, or ways to engage with us. So thank you so much, everyone. We'll end a little early.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks, bye.
See y'all soon. What's more?
Is
there
that,
more thing?
Yeah, hold on.
All right,
And make sure.
hold on, we want to make sure we haven't left anything.
More, no, this is, oh, I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you. Oh, Bob is saying the first Yes event was awesome, and he hopes to see everyone there in November. So thank you, Bob.
Great.
Bye-bye.